but also powered by AFRO Group. Thank you again for giving me this platform to present our remote access solution. First of all, if you are unfamiliar with Ixon as a company, Ixon is the creator of the Ixon Cloud, which is the world's first no-code IIoT platform, which means that it is a platform that is easy to use. You don't have to understand a deep level of coding to be able to use this in a very easy manner. It's an end-to-end solution, so Ixon both offers the cloud, but the hardware as well, the hardware that you connect to your machines, to your installations, and that handles the secure connection for you and allowing you to remotely connect. It's an international company with its headquarters in the Netherlands, so in Western Europe. And we have a background in system integration, meaning that Ixon used to be a system integrator and was involved in machine building before we started to use the remote solution that we now know as the Ixon Cloud. The Ixon Cloud itself is also web-based, meaning that you don't have to install any software to be able to use this, and that's a very neat feature. No software apart from the browser that you're probably using now as well needs to be used to be able to remotely connect to your machines. And what that looks like, I'll show you in a couple of minutes. So let's move on. Next slide. Since a couple of months, we're working together with AFRO Group, and like I said, we're extremely satisfied and proud of the fact that we have enrolled in a partnership with AFRO. I think that from an Ixon perspective, and also of course from an AFRO perspective, there's a good match, both in personalities and cooperation between everyone involved, and definitely also the addition of the Ixon Cloud to the portfolio that AFRO Group already has, and the experience that they have in the markets where they're active. So that's something that we're extremely pleased with. During the webinar that AFRO Group and Ixon are doing today, there are a couple of topics that we're going to discuss. And as I explained, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact your AFRO Group contact after this webinar, and we'll make sure to provide you with an answer to your questions. So the topics, first of all, of course, what remote service is. So what is remotely programming your machine, and why do we do that? What are the benefits of doing that? Why are more and more machine builders and system integrators implementing these kinds of solutions, and what does it bring them basically? Why would you need your own remote service tool? Or in the case of Ixon, why would you use a remote service platform like the Ixon Cloud? How does that bring benefit to the business that you do with your customers? How do you set up the portal? Of course, there will also be a hands-on demo, so a very practical demo on how to use the Ixon Cloud, how to configure the router, and how to go from receiving your first router until being able to set up your VPN connection. So you have a good idea of how that all works. And of course, how to set up a remote connection to your remote controller, so the PLC, the HMI, maybe a robot or whatever it is that you want to connect to the IX router. So first of all, remote service, especially nowadays in this very strange time where it's difficult to travel, or at least it's becoming a little bit more difficult to travel from one location to the next. Remote service is essential. It's so important that your installations and machines, wherever they are located in the world, can be remotely reached and remotely reprogrammed to make sure that you can troubleshoot your customer as good as possible. The coronavirus, again, has emphasized the importance of basically being able to remotely control your machines. And to give you somewhat of an impression, below you can see a graph that indicates the 6th week of this year until the 13th week of this year. And you can see that the amount of VPN usage in the Ixon Cloud has actually more than doubled, almost tripled since the start of the corona, because more and more machine builders and system integrators are relying on remote service solutions, just like the Ixon Cloud and the IX router, to remotely reprogram and connect to their machines. Another graph showing you that basically also the bytes sent, so the information and the data being sent towards machines has increased dramatically. It has almost quadrupled in the past couple of weeks, indicating that more and more customers are finding it difficult to travel to locations and are relying more on the Ixon Cloud to provide remote service. Speaking of remote service, what is it actually? What do we define as a remote service solution? Basically, remote service is the ability to deliver support when a machine halts or to run updates without having to travel to that machine. And the Ixon Cloud allows you to do that, to remotely reprogram that machine or push updates from anywhere in the world, wherever you have your phone, your laptop, or a tablet, whatever it is that you want to use to reprogram a machine. The Ixon Cloud allows you to do that. One of our Belgian customers actually sometimes does it from a plane. So he's flying from one part of Europe to the next, and while he's flying, he's reprogramming machines from his plane to wherever those machines are located. And this opens a new potential to improve the service that you are providing to your customers, and make sure that when that customer has a problem, you don't have to spend both time and financial funds to travel there, but be able to do that by simply setting up a VPN connection to the IX router and allow the IX router connected to your industrial hardware to do the programming and setting up the connections that you can securely use to reprogram that machine and get that customer up and running as soon as possible. So the benefits of remote service, I already mentioned a couple, but they can be basically summarized into 4 different and general benefits. As I explained, if you don't have to travel to remotely reprogram a machine, that saves you a lot of time, but also saves up on costs. You don't have to fly there, you don't have to travel there, and with a single click of a button, you're connected to that machine and you can remotely program and make sure that that machine gets up and running again as soon as possible. It allows you to spend the time that you have more wisely and also more flexible. You can decide for yourself when it is that you want to remotely program your machine, and you're not relying on flight times, on traveling times to go there. And this also improves the collaboration together, so the partnership with your customers, because you are able to troubleshoot more efficiently and more quickly compared to your competitors. And this improves the support that you can deliver and strengthen the ties that you have with your customer, and basically to enhance the ability to remotely program your machines. So after we can move on to the service platform known as Ixon Cloud, to tell it actually allows you to create your own remote service portal. So within your own web-based portal, again, the only thing that you need to have your first router that you've purchased through AFRO Group, and after that, connected to your industrial hardware and schedule, you can remotely control your machine. It has various tools, the platform, which we're going to go through in the hands-on demo in a few minutes to show you exactly what that looks like. And these tools, so VPN, but also the embedded VNC and HTTP services, again, which I'm going to demonstrate in a few minutes, will allow you to take control of every part of the industrial network that you have somewhere on a certain location. The most important thing, collaboration is at our core. The Ixon Cloud itself allows you to connect to your IX router or IX routers with an unlimited number of users, meaning that there is no limit on whoever you can invite to your cloud and the number of routers that you can have within one cloud. You might want to think, okay, why is this so important? Because with other similar solutions, you need to buy monthly licenses or sometimes yearly licenses to be able to set up multiple connections. So if you have machines around the world and a certain machine breaks down and you're reprogramming that machine, with other similar solutions, you would have to buy licenses for a second machine to be reprogrammed at the same time. And with the Ixon Cloud, there's no need to buy additional licenses. The only thing that you need is an IX router. It's as simple as that. And that also makes it extremely clear on pricing, for example, no hidden costs. You can do within that Ixon Cloud whatever you want with whoever you want. And if you want to set up, for example, 1, 10, or 100 VPN connection at the same time, for us, it doesn't matter. You're the user and you can do whatever you like. The Ixon Cloud itself, apart from the fact that you can remotely connect to your industrial hardware, it also comes with a user management system, meaning that you can invite both your colleagues, but also different partners within a certain machine building project, and determine what the permissions are that you want to give to that individual. You can decide if they are allowed to set up a VPN connection or another type of connection. Are they allowed to manage users? Are they allowed to reprogram different machines? So that can be completely tailored to the needs and wishes of, in this case, you as a machine builder or a system integrator. And the Ixon Cloud also provides you with a very clear device overview, making sure that you always connect to the right machine and make sure that you don't get lost in a whole list of different locations and machines, but can order that and structure that in a very easy way. So the most important part of the Ixon Cloud is, of course, the remote access part. So the part that allows you to remotely connect using VPN to the machines that you have spread around Africa or spread around the world, and making sure that you can remotely program that very easily. In order to do that, you have multiple options. So as I explained, the Ixon Cloud is connected to the IX router. This is the IX router. There are different IX routers depending on the connectivity type that you want to use. Ethernet port, so you plug in an Ethernet cable which will connect to the setup to the Ixon Cloud. But there are also other connectivity methods that you can use. The also instead of using the Ethernet version, you want Wi-Fi. That's also one of the IX routers that you can have. And the final and third connectivity method is 4G. So apart from the fact that you can use Ethernet and Wi-Fi, you can also use 4G. For example, on a location where Ethernet or Wi-Fi is simply not available or not allowed. And the different connection methods also act as a failover, meaning that if you have, just like in this case, an IX router with Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and 4G, so all combined in one router, they can switch between different connections. So if for some reason the Ethernet connection would go down, the router can switch to Wi-Fi, making sure that that router remains online. And if for some reason also that Wi-Fi connection would go down, it can also switch to 4G and use the SIM card to maintain its connection. So depending on the local circumstances, depending on where your installation or machine will be placed, you can pick exactly the right router to make sure that you can use the availability of a certain connection at a certain location. The IX router also comes with various antennas. The ones that you see here are the very basic ones, so a little Wi-Fi antenna and a 4G antenna, but we also supply the antennas you can mount outside of a metal cabinet. So to place the IX router together with other industrial hardware in the metal cabinet, the machine cabinet, and have an antenna on the outside to receive the signal and pass that on to the cabinet. These various connectivity methods, of course, all make sure that a VPN connection can be set up to the router, so between the router and the cloud, and from the cloud to your laptop, your PC, your phone, tablet, or again, whatever it is that you want to use to remotely connect to your machine. The VPN is, of course, the mainly used feature. You would set up your VPN connection, start your programming software, depending on, of course, what type of brand of PLC you're using. But apart from VPN, the Ixon Cloud also allows you to see the screen of a remote HMI. So if you have a touch screen with a machine, and that machine is, that touchscreen is running a VNC server, you can embed that in the Ixon Cloud. And the same applies to a web server that you might have been running on a PLC. You can embed those two connection methods together with VPN in one single portal, all within the Ixon Cloud. And again, normally you would have to maybe install 6 or 7 different programs to be able to do all of that. And now you can do that within one single platform, making it easier for you to exactly see how that machine is performing and to see if remote programming is necessary. So connectivity has already been discussed a little bit, the different connection methods, so Ethernet and or 4G and or Wi-Fi. And these connection methods allow you to set up a secure VPN connection between the router and the cloud. And that's also seamlessly integrated. So the programming of such a router only takes 3 minutes. So not 13 or 30, but 3 minutes, and it's that easy. Making sure that you don't spend hours and hours in configuring a router, but making it as easy as possible for machine builders and system integrators around the world to get remote access for their machines. And just like with the Ixon Cloud itself, it's a web-based configuration. So from within the Ixon Cloud, you can configure your router and push new configurations to the router if you want to make certain changes. Again, very easy to use. The configuration of a router is something that I will show you in a couple of minutes. So once we finish this presentation, we'll go on and I'll show you exactly how that would work. In this case, let's go ahead and yeah, we can go through the demo together. And again, if you have any questions after you've seen the Ixon Cloud working, please feel free to reach out to AFRO Group and ask them the questions that you want to ask, or if you need more information, get a quote, or want to get started with Ixon, please reach out and they will be definitely able to help you in a timely manner. So the Ixon Cloud, of course, always starts with a login. So you have to log in using your own account. In this case, I'm using my personal account and I'm logging on to the ProPack machinery, which is a cloud that we're using for demonstration purposes, just like this one. And it has different machines with different functions, and that will allow me to tell you exactly and show you, more importantly, exactly how the Ixon Cloud works. So let's first log on. And after you've logged on, you will see an overview of all the different companies that you have access to. And once you're logged on, you can see that we have different machines listed here. So as soon as you log on, you have a list of all the machines and basically all the IX routers that you have configured. The green dot next to them indicates that this is a machine that is perfectly online. And the one that is grayed out here means that the router is either not connected, that it's turned off, or that something else might be wrong. But normally you would see that these routers are all online. And if you click on one, you can already see that we can set up a VPN connection to that remote location to start our programming software and remotely debug or program that machine. But in order to be able to do that, so in order to get a router online, you first, of course, have to configure the router for the first time. And we do that under Tools. So if you click on Tools, you will see multiple things. Of course, the configuration file, the file that you create, and that you transfer to the router to make sure that that router can use that information and set up a connection. And also an important thing is the VPN client. So apart from the fact that this is all accessible through a web page, so you can access your machines through a secured web page, you also have to download a VPN client. And the VPN client is a lightweight program running on your computer, running in the background of your computer. You won't probably even notice that it's there, but that little program basically handles the VPN connection between your device and the Ixon Cloud. And from the Ixon Cloud, that connection is forwarded to the router that you want to connect to. The installation of the VPN client is not really interesting. It's simply something that you download and then install. The configuration file for the Ixon Cloud is probably a little bit more interesting, so let's move on with that. So you click on Start Configuration. So you want to start the configuration of your first or second or 100th router that you've purchased through AFRO Group. And the cloud will show you exactly under which company this will be registered. So in this case, that's going to be the ProPack Machinery demo. The first step in configuring this router is to determine how you want to connect. So is that via an Ethernet cable? So do you want to use an Ethernet cable to provide internet to the router? And that can, of course, make sure that you have an IP address for that router, and that can be assigned dynamically, so by the local network itself. Or you can assign a static IP address to the router, for example, because your end customer has reserved a specific IP address for your device. A second option would be to, of course, use Wi-Fi. So in that case, you can enter the network name on site and enter the password that might be applicable to the Wi-Fi you want the router to connect to. And the final option, of course, is a SIM card. So you can use a SIM card for the router to set up a connection. And in that case, you would need the APN, so the network name that you're using. And if the SIM card has a PIN code, you have to fill it out. For the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to use a wired network. And after you've decided the first step, so after you've decided if you want to use an Ethernet cable, a Wi-Fi connection, or a 4G connection, you need to determine what the IP range will be of the local network. The router itself has a built-in firewall, so there's a firewall between the WAN side and the LAN side, making sure that the devices that you have connected to the router are secured and that no one can have access to them, except for, of course, the machine builders that are using these routers and that need access. But that also creates a different small machine network where your PLC, your HMI, your robot or IPC are connected. And basically this tells you exactly what the LAN IP address will be. And after you've decided this is the IP range or IP address that I'm going to use, you're done. So the configuration is extremely easy. You only need 2 or 3 steps to be able to configure this router. And once you've done this, so once you've created your configuration file, you can download that onto a USB stick and transfer the file from your computer to an IX router. Now, apart from the fact that this USB stick says Ixon, it's not a very interesting USB stick. You can basically use any pen drive or USB stick that you have on site, but that will transfer this configuration file from the computer to the router. So on top of the router, as you can see, there's also a USB port, and you insert the USB stick into the USB port, and the router will take a couple of seconds to download the file that you've created. And using that file, it will also register in the cloud that you're using. So in this case, being the ProPack Machinery. At the top, a yellow bar will then appear and indicate that a new device has been registered, and you can rename that device to, for example, Project A1. And from that moment on, you're already able to set up a VPN connection. So from the moment you take the router out of its box until being able to set up a VPN connection, literally only takes about 2 minutes, depending on how fast you can type and scroll through the menus. The configuration itself is extremely easy, and you as a machine builder don't have to do a lot to be able to use the VPN within a couple of minutes. The Ixon Cloud will handle most of the things for you. So imagine this is a router that you have located somewhere around the world, perhaps in beautiful Egypt. Then you can start your configuration software, and over the VPN connection, you can remotely program that machine in case you need to. As you can also see, once you're done, you save your project in your software and you click on disconnect and you log out. That's it. Apart from the fact that you can connect over VPN, there are other things that you see here as well. The info tab, the tab that you would normally use, of course, also has the MAC address of the router, serial number, a certain description that you've perhaps given to the router to identify where it's actually connected to, or to which location. In this case, this router is located in Venlo, the Netherlands, which is not far from the Ixon headquarters. It's a few miles south. The firmware, of course. So this has the latest firmware, 3.18.1, which was released yesterday. And also important, what kind of router it actually is. So in this case, this is a router that has Ethernet, 4G, and Wi-Fi, just like this dummy. So it has the ability to connect over Ethernet, 4G, and Wi-Fi. And as I explained, that also works as a failover. So in case the primary connection of the router, for example, Ethernet, would drop, it will automatically switch to Wi-Fi or 4G, depending on how you configured it. The VPN connection I just explained, and as you probably already saw, we also have added an HTTP server and a VNC server here. The reason that we did that is because we have a PLC with a HTTP server running on it. And the beautiful thing about the Ixon Cloud is that you can use the same portal to directly address and reach the HTTP server that is running, in this case, on this Siemens PLC. So again, no need to do a lot of different things. You can simply click on the, how do you call it, the shortcut basically that you have created, and address the HTTP server. And the same applies to, for example, project B2, where we have a VNC service added. And again, without having to set up a VPN connection and using other types of software, we can directly click on the shortcut that says control screen and see the HMI and see the touch panel that is perhaps showing an alarm message, or basically it allows you to exactly see what your customer is seeing on that touch panel, and also allows you to remotely control the machine using the HMI. So in regards to the connectivity, you have VPN, you have VNC and HTTP all embedded into one single platform, making sure that you don't have to do a lot and don't have to install all these different types of programs to be able to use that. And of course, it's also visible to see who connected to which connection method at a certain time, to make sure that you always have an overview of who is connecting to your machines. Apart from the remote access solution, there's also a user management system embedded. And as I explained during the presentation, you can invite certain co-workers, but also certain people who are involved with the machine building project, and determine if they are allowed to do certain things. So if you go to the user section, you can see that a lot of my co-workers have access to this particular demonstration cloud. And I'll use myself in this case as an example. You can see that I basically have all the permissions in this cloud that I could possibly have. But if you want to, for example, invite your end customer for them to have access to the HMI as well remotely, you can determine that he or she is only allowed to connect using VNC. And apart from that, you can revoke all the other permissions and make sure that they only have access to the connection methods that they should have access to. So we've discussed the remote access parts already, and also the user management system. And hopefully this gave you a good impression of what it exactly is that makes the Ixon Cloud unique. It's web-based, meaning that what you call Mozilla Firefox or Google Chrome, to be able to connect to your machines remotely. It is an all-in-one solution, meaning that you don't have to go through different types of software to be able to connect over VPN and use a different program to connect and see, and another that you've included in your platform. And the term all-in-one also means that apart from remote access, Ixon offers you the possibility to configure dashboards. And for those of you who already saw this, apart from 2 routers that we're using to show the VPN and all the other possibilities in terms of remote access, there's also a cloud logging demo and a cloud notify demo. I'll go through them, of course, nonetheless. Cloud logging is an additional service that we offer to pull live data from the PLC and store that in the Ixon Cloud. And you can use that to visualize how that machine is performing and share those dashboards with your customer. For example, to see if the machine is living up to what you promised that customer and making sure that the machine is doing very well. The remote access part, so the VPN, the VNC, the web server, the user management, and the usage of the cloud itself is all for free as long as you have an IX router. As an IX router itself, the cloud, so using the cloud is for an unlimited number of users to your cloud. There's no need to buy monthly or yearly licenses to be able to set up multiple connections. We want to make it as easy as possible for machine builders to get working on remote access. Additional services, so services that are not included with the free use of the Ixon Cloud or with the purchase of an IX router, are Cloud Logging and Cloud Notify. If you're not using Cloud Notify or Cloud Logging, you of course don't have to pay for that, but in case you want to start using data logging to improve your machines or to create dashboards that show you exactly and allow you to monitor how a machine is performing, you can add Cloud Logging and Cloud Notify to your portfolio. Cloud Notify and Cloud Logging are extremely easy to set up, just like with have to go through to be able to pull data from your industrial hardware until being able to visualize that in the cloud. Before we head on to showing you exactly how cloud logging works, I first want to go to the config tab. The config tab, so apart from info where you have everything in your main menu, so the VPN and with others also the VNC and the web service, you can also see that it lists some of the dashboards that we've created using the cloud logging feature that is embedded in the Ixon Cloud. But before we go to that, just a few things about the config tab. The config tab, as the name already says, shows you the configuration of the Ixon Cloud. So going through the configuration of the router under tools, you can see it's using a wireless connection, what the LAN settings are, so what the settings are of the local machine network, and the firewall. By default, the firewall, as you can see, has no access, allows no access between the corporate network and the machine network, and also vice versa, so from the machine network to the corporate network. Again, to ensure that no one can penetrate the firewall or reprogram the machine if they're not allowed to. And if you make changes in this configuration, you don't have to perform something on site, so you don't have to go to that location to reprogram the router. But if you make a change here, for example, let's change the LAN configuration, and I want, instead of this IP address, to use this IP address. I can simply click on confirm, and I have two options. I can push this new setting to the Ixon Cloud, and from the Ixon Cloud to the IX router, so that will change the settings of the router. Or in case you've made a mistake, you can also import again the right configuration from the device. But anyway, you don't have to go there to reconfigure the router again. You can just very easily do that remotely. So about cloud logging. Cloud logging is an easy way to pull data from your machine, create dashboards, and use that to improve your machines. You've probably already seen some of the dashboards that we've created already. There are basically two types of dashboards that you can create. So you have live monitors, which, as the name already says, shows you live data coming in from the machine and telling you live, updating live on how that machine is performing. And you have historical reports. And historical reports don't update live, but show you the data of last week or the last month or the last year, and basically allowing you to go back in time and see how that machine has been performing since the start of the cloud logging. And to give you somewhat of an impression of what that looks like, this is actually an historical report that we've created, and it's based on different widgets. So for those of you who are using an Android phone, this might look familiar, since you can choose yourself which kind of widget you want to place where. So at the top we have normally we have a gauge, so a meter that shows you the quality of the production and the performance. In order to go from basically scratch, so from starting the configuration of cloud logging until being able to pull data from your configure the router and making sure that the router knows exactly how to get that data from the PLC. So as you can hear, under services, we've created a data source. A data source is basically a setting that we use to tell the router, hey router, there's a PLC connected and I want you to read the variables that we've programmed into that PLC. And the router needs to know, of course, on which IP address that data source is located, but it also has to know what kind of industrial protocol you're using. So to show you what that looks like once you get started, you click on the plus. So let's create a new one, for example, Siemens PLC, and this is an S7-1200. And you need to enter the IP address of the PLC to make sure that you can connect to the right IP address and read the variables from the IP address which is linked to that PLC. In this case, I'm going to use 192.168.140.10 as an example. The second step is basically telling the router what it exactly is on that IP address that you want to, interact with. It could, of course, be the VNC service, so with the HMI that I showed you to remotely see the touch panel or the screen of that machine. If it's a web server running on a PLC that you want to connect to, or if it's like with Cloud Logging and Cloud Notify, a data source that you want to read data from and pull to the cloud. So I've selected that in this case, we want to use this IP address as a data source. And you can determine what kind of protocol you want to use. So the most common protocols are supported. So Modbus, the Siemens protocol, OPC UA, Ethernet IP, for example, for Omron or Allen Bradley, and also BACnet for building automation, and Melsec for Mitsubishi PLCs from Japan. Let's just use one as an example. For example, Modbus. And as soon as you click on the protocol that you wish to use, you also see that the cloud selects the right port. So that's important, so the router knows exactly I'm using Modbus, and that means that I have to talk over port 502 to the PLC that I want to connect to. And you add this to the cloud. Now, We've also used a Modbus data source before, and in this data source, you can copy the variables or the data tags, whatever you want to call it, that you've programmed into the PLC. So for this PLC that is actually part of a weighing machine, we've configured 12 variables that we are constantly monitoring. The beautiful thing is that you can use two methods to enter these variables into the Ixon Cloud. So I have a PLC with 12 variables, and I want these 12 variables to be copied to the router, so the router can read those variables on the right address. If you click on the plus again, you can add one variable manually each time, or you can also import that from a CSV file, making it, of course, way easier to copy that from your PLC to the Ixon Cloud. Also, once you've added all these different variables, so in this case, these 12 variables, you can export that again to a CSV file and import that again with a second, third, or a fourth machine. So you don't have to do the adding of all the variables all over again. So that's the first step of cloud logging. Telling the addresses of the PLC or industrial hardware in general, what the protocol is that you want to use for logging, and telling the IX router. We move on to the fourth tab, which is apps. You can choose if you want to use this data source for logging or alarming, or both maybe. So you click on open, and it will open the menu of cloud logging. After you've entered all these variables into the Ixon Cloud, you also have to add a certain tag, a card, a tag to a variable. And this tag basically tells the IX router how you log. Variables that we've entered in the data source is called underweight. And this is a variable that we're logging on interval, meaning every certain period of time. Apart from time, you can also log variables when they change. In case it's a Boolean, for example, you want to log when it goes from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 0 again, or trigger. So logging on trigger means that once a certain condition is met, the Ixon Cloud will start logging, and once it's below a certain threshold again, or above a certain threshold, it will stop logging, and this can be completely configured. On interval, and in this case, it's every 30 seconds. The router itself communicates with the PLC at an extremely high speed, every 2 or 5 milliseconds, but it only sends one data point from those 30 seconds to the cloud, making sure that you don't get a complete wave or a tsunami of information that is very hard to dilute, but making sure that you get the data that you need. And that could be anything from getting information every 200 milliseconds until every hour. And you can decide for yourself what, of course, the interval is that you want to use. We're going to leave it at 30 seconds for now. So every 2 to 5 milliseconds, the IX router is constantly requesting the data from the PLC. In case we're measuring temperature, or let's use this example, underweight, the router asks the PLC, hello PLC, what is the variable, what is the value of the variable underweight? And then the PLC says 20. And as soon as the router has that answer, it will ask that again. So this is, again, at an extremely high speed. But in order to structure the information that we're getting from the PLC, the router will only send the last value that it has received of those 30 seconds to the cloud. Apart from the last value, it can also be the average, so the mean. So all the data that it has gathered in those 30 seconds will be combined, and it will take the average of that data and send that to the cloud for visualization. But it could also be the lowest value or the highest value that it has seen since it started logging. Retention policy is pretty self-explanatory. It simply tells you how long you want to store data in the cloud. So that could be anything from 6 months up until 7 years. So you can store your data for quite a lot of time. So once you've added a tag for all the variables that you've done, you can go to dashboarding. But before we do that, just like with the data source, where I showed you that you can add variables one by one, so manually, but also through a CSV file, the same applies here. So you can add a new data tag one by one. But if you've, for example, already created a whole beautiful list of data tags, you can also import that from a CSV file and copy that very easily to make sure that you don't have to do that all over again. And the final part of cloud logging, so after you're getting that data, you want to visualize that data. And Ixon provides customers with the dashboards that the customers can, of course, create for themselves. So whether it's a data report or a live monitor, but you can also use the API to pull the data from the Ixon Cloud to software that you want to use to visualize data. For example, Microsoft Power BI or Grafana or other tools that allow you to visualize data in certain ways. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to stick with the Ixon Cloud. As you can see, the well-known plus that allows you to create a new dashboard from scratch, so from the start. But again, also just like with the data tags and the variables in the data source, you can import that again. So if you've created this very good dashboard, you can save that on your computer, you can export that, and you can import that again with a new machine. So you don't have, again, to do the whole configuration of the dashboard all over again. And in this case, I'm going to use a Live Original, which is a dashboard that I've created a few months ago. And as you can see, just like with the data reports, it is showing you different widgets that allow you to visualize the data in a way that you want it to be visualized. In this case, a widget always consists of a title. So in this case, we've created a status widget. That could also be a graph or a gauge or a meter, a table, whatever tool you want to use to visualize the data. And the widget name is simply the title of the widget, the one that you will see in the cloud. And of course, the tag, so the variable that you want to visualize the data from. You can determine what is good and what is bad, basically. So now we're using the state or status variable to determine and visualize if a machine is running properly. And we've determined that that the machine is running fine when the variable has a value of 2. And if the variable has a value of 1, of course, again, which is being measured by the router, the production has halted, and it will show that the machine is not producing any more. And also with weight, for example, which is a graph widget to visualize the data in a way that you want it to be visualized. And that's how cloud logging works. So apart from remote access, you can also use cloud logging to determine how this data is visualized and making sure that you can create dashboards that you can also share with your customers to make sure that you can visualize and monitor the performance of a machine or even multiple machines if you like. Cloud Notify, the configuration is actually pretty similar to cloud logging because this also starts with a data source. So you have to create a data source and again, you determine what the IP address is that you want to read the data from, and you have to tell the router what the protocol is that you want to use. So that could be Siemens, Modbus, all the same protocols as with cloud logging. And instead of using cloud logging, we're now going to go to Cloud Notify. So we're going to use that data source that is programmed into the PLC to not log data, but to trigger certain alarms. And the benefit of this service is that you can get alarms on your mobile phone or via email to inform you that a certain machine has encountered a critical state or has encountered an error that you need to be aware of. So again, the router is reading the variables in this PLC at an extremely high speed, but we have to tell the router when we want to receive certain alarms. So in this case, the variable name is counter 1000 max 30, and the title of the alarm is alarm every 30 seconds. So if you receive an alarm, in this case via this setting, the alarm itself will say alarm every 30 seconds. And you can also see, apart from a title that you can configure for yourself, that there is a certain, tells you if this alarm is absolutely critical, if it's medium priority, or I need to be aware of it, but it's not really a bad thing, but anyway send out an alarm, so it has a low priority. Of course, we have to also determine how this alarm is triggered. So what is the rule for triggering this alarm? And in this case, the alarm is triggered if the value that the router is measuring of this variable is greater than or equal to 30. So if it reaches 30 or goes above 30, an alarm will be sent to, in this case, the people who are involved. And instructions, as the name already says, this allows you to create instructions and tell you exactly how you want to resolve the issue. And that will help the people, for example, standing next to the machine, to know what they need, to tell them what they need to do, and make sure that that machine gets up and running as soon as possible. After you've created these alarms, and you probably already guessed this, you can create these alarms again one by one, or import them again from a different machine. So if you have a machine with the same alarms and you want to copy that, the only thing that you have to do is click a couple of times, and then you've copied the alarms from one machine to the next. I showed you the severity, and that you can have a low, medium, or high priority alarm. And this also determines, like I said, who gets certain alarms. So the people who are registered under your company, because they're colleagues or end customers, can be notified. So you can determine if someone should always be notified, so about every alarm, if they should only be notified in case the alarm is high or medium, or when the alarm has a high priority. And in this case, I'll use myself as an example again. I want to be always notified. Whenever an alarm occurs, I want that alarm to be sent to either my mobile phone or via email, and you can determine for yourself which method works best for you, and yeah, make sure that you receive the alarms that you need to receive. So this is also the endpoint for Cloud Notify. It's extremely easy to set up and extremely easy to receive certain alarms depending on what it exactly is that you want to be informed about. And I'm going to turn this off because elsewise I will receive messages, of course. But hopefully you will be able to see this. As you can see, I've just received an alarming message about the alarm that I've just created. So it's that easy. You can simply get the alarms on your mobile phone, log on using the Ixon app, which is freely downloadable from the Android and iOS store. So that also gives you the same opportunities in terms of seeing the screen of the HMI, reaching the web server, or even setting up a VPN connection remotely to your machine to remotely reprogram that whenever it suits you. The final part that I wanted to share with you is the branding. So apart from the fact that Ixon gives you a very easy way of getting remote access to your machines, it also allows you to use your own corporate logo and your corporate branding by default. So without any additional license, you can add your own logo, just like the ProPack Machinery Company, and you can apply different colors. By default, the cloud will be blue, branded via, of course, the branding of Ixon itself. But you can change that to, for example, the beautiful yellow that AFRO Group has, or to your own corporate colors, of course. And there's also the option to even have your own URL, just like this one. Normally, if you want to log on to the Ixon Cloud, you go to connect.ixon.cloud. But with premium branding, so that's a premium package that you can have, you can also include your own URL. For example, insight.propack-machinery.com with your own logging page for your customers, or for example, remoteaccess.afrogroup.com, and provide that portal, that machine building portal, to your end customer as if it is your own solution, and also with your own details, website, your own contact details, making sure that the customers that you invite as a machine builder are exactly aware of who they need to contact in case they have an issue with one of their machines. That's basically what I wanted to share with you guys today about the Ixon Cloud. I want to give the floor back to our partners from AFRO Group. Thank you very much for attending this webinar.
Okay, thank you, George, for your time and for your support. Now we shall wait for our attendees to, if they have any questions to ask. Anyone have any questions, please just unmute yourself and start ask us.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine that I've been so clear that there aren't any questions.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon, actually.
Good afternoon.
I just want to ask about a small issue regarding this web accessing this the level of the security from the firewall and the switches, okay, from your side, and if it can accessing right remote desktop for the local machines, and not the screens or something in the PLC, but we talk about some sort like DCS. So how can we access it, and it's secured or not? And if there any kind of data diet configuration we can add for the switches, so it's just working as a monitoring, not configuration.
So in terms of security, very good question. Of course, I always say that either the first or the second question after a demo is always about security, and that is again being proven today. But that's also very logical, because it's important that the equipment that you place with an end customer is well secured. And it's very difficult, of course, to explain everything that we do in terms of security within a couple of minutes. But I can assure you that if you're using the example of the web service and the HTTP server, if you want to reach that, that is still going over a secured connection. So even though you're using the shortcut, so by clicking on HTTP server, there is still a secure connection between your laptop and the Ixon Cloud because of HTTPS. So that's with all the modern websites, something that you will, of course, recognize. And from the Ixon Cloud, that signal gets turned into the VPN connection. So if you click on the web server functionality, because you want to reach that, for example, the web server that I've showed you on the Siemens PLC, it's via a secure HTTPS connection to the cloud, and from the cloud through the encrypted VPN tunnel to your local hardware. So that's basically how also that functionality is secured. Also, Ixon has written the Ixon Cloud Security White Paper. I know it's a long name, but the Ixon Cloud Security White Paper is something that AFRO can provide to you, and it shows exactly how each and every part of the Ixon Cloud is secured, and also tells you about the processes that we're doing at Ixon on a daily basis to make sure that that cloud stays safe, and that our customers can keep using this secure solution for as long as they like.
Sorry, again, the point, okay, you answered the point, but I want to add something that I can, right now, when we connect to my network, okay, I can configure my network from the other side to just accept certain IP or something like that. So this kind of configuration, it will be helpful for me to monitoring the system more, or it will hang out and the router will not accept it, something. But this is what I mean. To increase the security from even my side, okay, I can configure these ports that will connect to your router to just open for a certain IP. So this will be good for the system, or it will not be good.
So you want to make sure that some IP addresses can connect and others can't. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then I understood the question, right? Thank you. Basically, it's not IP based, but it is device based and user based. Even though that might sound different, it does exactly the same. So with the user rights management, you can decide if someone, to determine if they're allowed to use certain connections, and to determine if they are able to connect to certain devices. That's all being handled from within the Ixon Cloud. Perhaps that my contacts at AFRO can show you how that works in a one-to-one session after the webinar. And elsewise, please again feel free to, for example, state your question or make a drawing that you can send, and that further clarifies things, so we can support that and make sure that you get a full extensive answer to your question.
Okay.